Welcome back to Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso here on S3. And the physiological changes in women and the physiological differences between women and men can play a significant role in how we approach fitness, recovery and nutrition. And this morning we have to discuss this. And yes, it's everybody's business as well to know about all of the permutations around exercise and nutrition, especially around that particular subject matter. Now, womanhood and hormones, it's something that I think many more people need to understand. And this is why we've got the panel of experts that are here. So Dr. Chanel Martinison is here from Inner Health Medical Centers. We've got a seasoned dietitian. We've got Kerry Seedy is here, as well as biokineticist Jocelyn Latachan, who is here to make sure that we are ready to go and ready to rumble. So first and foremost, hello ladies, thank you so much.
Morning.
I'm so glad that I'm facilitating this conversation because I think it's everybody's business to know, about the physiological requirements, needs, everything that you need to know about a woman is so important. And I wanted to bring the three of you here to discuss. So if you don't mind, I'm asking questions from any point of view. But I think let's talk about the hormonal fluctuations and the physiological features when it comes to a woman, especially on a menstrual cycle, especially at what we would call that time of the month, just to better understand that type of process.
Okay, so in females, we go through it roughly 28 days a month.
Yeah.
Emphasis on roughly.
Yes.
And females go through different hormonal changes. Some days they feel like they can run a marathon. The next day they feel like they just want to sit on the couch and have some chips and have comfort food.
Yeah.
And it's all hormone dependent.
Yes.
So in the menstrual cycle specifically,
Yeah.
there are 4 stages of the cycle. There is the menstruation, there is the follicular phase, the ovulation, and the luteal stage. And all of these have different peaks and troughs of the hormones related. So in females, we've got estrogen and progesterone. In menstruation, so that would be usually day 1 to day 4, 5.
Yes.
There would be a sudden dip in the estrogen and progesterone. So that's when girls just don't feel great. They just want to, sit and bleed and just not be bothered. And then it comes to the follicular phase where they actually then have a boost of stamina and energy again. And then that's when they might want to feel a bit more energized and exercising. And then there's ovulation when the egg is released.
Yeah.
And then that's the peak of estrogen and testosterone in females too. And then there is the luteal phase when, it wants to, if there's no fertilized egg, the lining
Yes.
will happen again and girls will start to bleed again. So there's a lot of different hormone peaks and troughs.
Which is important to know about as well, especially on a physiological level. But let's talk about the menstrual cycle, some of the effects of each one of these phases. In fact, let's talk about some of the adjustments that perhaps need to be made to make it a bit more of a bearable and manageable process. Do you have any recommendations in that regard?
In terms of nutrition, obviously,
Yes.
most of the studies in sports nutrition have been done in men.
Yeah.
So a lot of the guidelines are taken from men to be, put towards women. So obviously, each woman has to be, your diet has to be adjusted accordingly to their training.
Yes.
The most biggest risk in female athletes is undernutrition. So a lot of sports require you to be quite light in weight, especially the aesthetic sports like gymnastics, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
and the endurance events as well. So the most important thing is that they get enough energy in. That's number one. During, Dr. Chanel spoke about, during the luteal phase and
Yes.
follicular phase and that kind of thing, so there are some studies showing that there's reduced glycogen storage during the luteal phase. And that's when women generally crave carbohydrates and sugary things.
PMS.
So that's, like the general PMS symptoms. So that's when it's very important that they have enough carbohydrates in their diet. The body's actually craving carbs.
Yes.
And especially for your pro athletes and women that are training heavily, it's important that they get enough carbs in sort of 3 to 4 hours before they train.
Well, that's very, very good to know because I think that also just, in my experience with ladies around me, it's about that there's almost this punishment of oh my word, I had so many carbs and now my fitness program is all backtracked because of this whole thing and it's unfair. And I think that maybe if we can anticipate and plan ahead, it might be different. So on a training level, we mentioned glycogen stories, etc. Let's talk about how we can fitness and adjust our fitness to make sure it's manageable around that stage. I mean, what type of things can we think about in terms of planning ahead?
Yeah, exactly, Carl. I think we shouldn't use our physiology as like a weakness.
Yes.
We should use it to understand how our body works and connect with our body as females. So I think it's super important to try and sync our training program and recovery program within our menstrual cycle.
Okay.
So within the first 2 weeks, usually our estrogen and progesterone increase. And towards the end, we want to try and push for strength training. That's when we'll get our most reps strengthened, and because your body's going to recover quicker. And then towards the end, of those last 2 weeks, you might want to go to a HIIT class, a dance class. That's when your energy is up, your mood is up. And then those following 2 weeks, you might not be able to recover as quickly. So you'd rather want to do maybe a yoga class, Pilates, or stretch. But most importantly, it's up to you and to the woman specifically. It's not like a cookie cutter approach. It's very individualized, and it's how you're feeling and how you want to connect with your own body. So.
Which is beautiful. I think it's important. Let's go around to the, when you are having the low points. Let's talk about how we can bring that to a certain level, because, you feel the low points, the energy is down, but you need to still train and feel good. Any suggestions as to how you want to just mitigate some of those types of low points? Are there any things and strategies that we can put in place in order to educate some of the ladies?
I think the first step is having these conversations. So now girls know.
Oh, there we go. That's good.
So now girls know that this is normal. It's part of your body. It's okay to feel one day and to feel great the next day. So if you can anticipate it, like you said, that does help a lot. And then, just like Justin was saying, going through the motions with it. When your body's craving the carbs, eat the carbs. It's okay. And when your body can recover quicker, then exercise. But you can, just try and understand your body, and trying to listen to your body, I think, is important.
Okay, this is good. So in terms of the dietitian side of things, planning for this type of thing, what are some of the foods which you'd say would be great in terms of feeding your body the right stuff to get the right type of balance? Because I do know that there is moderation that's important.
Yeah.
I do know when you are listening to your body, you tend to overeat and overcompensate, and then it's salty and it's sweet and salty and sweet, and you want to mix all those things together. So let's talk about some of the things that we could eat to help, let's just say, a bizarre craving.
Yeah.
Because I know you want to listen to your body, but you also want to make sure that you're healthy and continue the wellness.
No,
so
for sure.
what type of things should we, set out to make sure that when the craving happens, we can grab something that's more available than, let's just say, something that is a good mixture of salty and sweet?
Yeah, so obviously if you're training a lot, your carb and protein requirements are quite high.
Okay.
You still want to try and keep the fat content down, because obviously you want to gain, especially if you're on a strength training program, you want to gain lean muscle and you don't want to gain body fat. So we focus on the high carbohydrate foods, so things like, but I'd focus more on the low GI carbs, so things like, whole wheat bread, seeded bread, oats in the morning, fruit and yogurt, having healthy dairy snacks, that kind of thing. Also good for recovery post-training. So things like fruit and yogurt's very good recovery post-training.
Yes.
So really balanced eating, like you mentioned, I generally advocate more Mediterranean type eating. It's got 6 years of science behind it, so it's definitely the healthiest in terms of the way you eat.
Yes.
Having those snacks available post-training, for the professional sports people or people that are training heavily, you can get recovery drinks that have the appropriate blend of carbs and protein, which helps with recovery post-training as well. Yeah.
Let's go back to the movement side of things. So now we've got the body, sorted out. Movement is also quite important. So for the days where you don't want to train, you still want to move, you still want to be healthy. Do you have any suggestions in movements that you think are easy to do and easy to go to for that type of day?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's all about being kind to yourself and not being hard on yourself. So if you want to take those lighter movements, just go for a walk, go outside, take a yoga class, grab a friend, do some stretches. It's great for when you're feeling bloated, when you're feeling crampy, when you're feeling like you just want some light stretches to help the body. So just take a walk outside. A light walk is perfectly enough for some movement throughout the day, and then also get enough recovery and enough sleep throughout the day. Getting at least 7 hours, below 7 hours can increase your risk of injury. So making sure you recover and listen to your body.
Doctor, what do you think of naps during this time? No, you said sleep. I'm serious now. I mean, would you recommend naps? If you can take a nap, if you're not part of the rat race, so to speak, can you take a nap to help these things out?
Just yesterday I was saying I haven't taken a day nap in a
Oh my
long
word. A
time.
day nap is so good. Oh my word.
It's been a while.
Yes.
I definitely think it's important. I think that some people can do it.
Yeah.
I don't think personally I can do it because then I just feel more frustrated once
Yes.
I wake up. But definitely, I think having that boost of energy does, help too. I think so. I would recommend naps, especially during those cycles and the
Okay.
luteal phase, and that your body is more bloated. You do feel more tired. So I would definitely recommend it.
This is lovely. Ladies, I want to continue this conversation. I think there's more for us to discuss. I think it's great. So the experts will be here for you. Any questions? 063-408-8863. We'd love to answer.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. I'm so glad you could join us once again on your Feel Good Breakfast Show. This is S3, and we're continuing our discussion about women and their fitness regimes. And next, we will be exploring the effects of birth control, perimenopause, and menopause on women's health and performance. And we still have the doctor on the couch, Dr. Chanel Martinison, as well as Kerry Seedy and biokineticist Jocelyn Ladachan, to just answer all of these questions. And I have many, which is very, very important to have. So let's start off with, Doc, the hormonal impact, right, of birth control on, let's just say, performance and well-being. I think it's important for us to explore this particular thing because naturally, birth control, if it's a step, if you consult with your doctor, that's where you want to go, there's going to be some effects. Let's talk.
Yeah. So in our bodies as females, we've got estrogen and progesterone.
Yeah.
When we take in hormonal contraceptives, it is like taking in more of that synthetic forms of estrogen and progesterone.
Okay.
And so when, like we explained earlier with the menstrual cycle, there are these peaks and troughs of estrogen and progesterone. And when you take the hormones, it actually sort of keeps that state a little bit more steady.
Yes.
And so obviously there's more. Either some females are on progesterone only,
Yeah.
and some are on estrogen only, or progesterone and estrogen,
Okay.
so a combination. There are different types, pills, IUCDs, different methods. But obviously, once you've discussed with your doctor, you'll decide what's the best option for you. Some are systemically that can affect you, and some are just more locally affecting. So, once you take them, sometimes it doesn't affect your menstrual cycle as much because it's in a bit more of a steady state. So you do feel a little bit more stable on them.
Just as an intro to the next question, let's look at the building blocks to understand perimenopause, menopause, and someone's who is having a hot flash after 40 and is worried about menopause coming on. Let's talk about that for a second. Just before we ask any more questions, just so do we have a good understanding, a base understanding for what perimenopause is and what menopause is?
Okay, so perimenopause, peri means around.
Okay.
And menopause is the stopping of that menses. So
Yes.
you stop your menstruation for at least a year. So there should be no bleeding for at least a year in that female's life. Then you can really only say, oh, I've reached menopause.
Okay.
So you can't just, once you have a hot flash, you're like, oh, I'm in menopause.
Yeah.
It's not that. It is
Okay.
once you've reached no bleeding. After you've not bled for a year,
Yes.
then it's considered abnormal uterine bleeding. So once there's no bleeding, you can safely say, okay, now it's menopause. So when there's menopause, there's also a drop in estrogen. And a drop in estrogen is lovely in a female body. And once there's a drop, there are different effects that
Yes.
can happen to you. So there's vasomotor changes like the hot flashes,
Yeah.
feeling just hot all the time. There's the fatigue, the sleep disturbances, recurrent UTIs, vaginal dryness and irritation, genitourinary complications. So females go through, there are lots of short-term and long-term changes. But in general, to just think about menopause, it is
Yes.
the stop of your menstruation and a drop in estrogen in the body.
So now let's talk about helping those moments, perimenopause and menopause, on a dietary level. What are the type of building blocks in our diet that we can put in place to make this experience a bit more manageable, especially in terms of our well-being?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that comes into play here is actually bone health in terms of women, because with a drop in estrogen, you get a drop in bone mineral density.
Okay.
So ensuring adequate calcium and vitamin D intake is very important.
Yes.
Especially in women that are training as well, their calcium requirements can, especially if they're energy restricting, their calcium requirements can actually even be even more.
Yes.
So we normally look at about 1,500 milligrams of calcium as a supplementation in terms of women going through perimenopause and menopause that are training heavily.
Okay.
We do recommend dividing that calcium intake up throughout the day because one can only absorb about 500 milligrams of calcium at a time.
Yeah.
But yeah, ensuring adequate calcium intake, either through supplementation or you can incorporate sort of 2 dairy servings a day, so yogurt and cow's milk and that kind of thing to help calcium intake.
Lovely. So a bunch of friends who are thinking it's happening, perimenopause, it's around, I feel it, the hot flashes are coming in, what's going to happen to me? Everything's going to dry up, including my motivation to train. Like, let's talk about how we can address that on a motivational level as well. Because as the doc said, a lot of fluctuations, a lot of estrogen declining. I feel like a decline speaks to somebody not being motivated to get up and train. And I believe it's the opposite, you know, and in order for us to have this overall vitality, we got to keep on moving. So what type of movement should we look at if perimenopause and menopause is something that we have as a reality? What type of training should we look at?
I think the most important type of training is strength training.
Yes.
Like we said, we obviously want to maintain or increase the muscle mass as we get older.
Yes.
So strength training is super important for joint mobility, bone density, as well as it decreases the risk of falls as we grow older. And I think in terms of that motivation is finding another group of ladies to do strength training with.
Yes.
I think that motivation is super important. I've seen it in our own clients is joining with a friend or a group of ladies together. It really increases that motivation to wake up in the morning and to come. And to know the benefits of strength training is so important. A lot of people don't understand the benefits to it. So I think educating women around the importance of it is going to motivate them to come and train.
So overall, we've got great foundations for dealing with these hormonal fluctuations. But I think my last question is about being a partner to somebody who's going through hormonal changes. I think it's an important part. A support system, mental health-wise, is vital. So let's talk to the gentlemen and the ladies who are partnering up with somebody who's going through hormonal changes. What are some of the things that you would like to see people leaning into as creating a support structure around people who are perhaps going through perimenopause, menopause, or even a hormonal fluctuation like a menstrual cycle throughout the month? Just as an anecdote to wrap this up, I think it's important.
So, okay, let's just touch on the menstruation
Yes, please.
first. So, as a partner, you just be, during that luteal phase, just be a little bit more gracious and kind to your female counterpart because they're going through a lot.
Yes.
So, I think just to understand that firstly, you know, bring the healthy snacks if you know, and don't tell me that I'm eating too many carbs at the time.
Yeah, pick your words.
Yeah.
Which
Think
is
about
important.
what you
Yes, okay,
say.
great.
Okay, so that's with menstruation. But then around perimenopause, so like we said, peri is around. So that's
All right.
usually when females will start to notice, ooh, they're feeling a little bit more easily irritated, like irritable and, you know, easily fatigued and things like that.
Okay.
So those things will start to slowly creep in. And then as a partner, you know, you now know your person, so you can try and understand, like, this is not normal. Something is changing
Yes.
within her, you know, her biome. So, you know, just understanding that there are changes happening. And then with the vaginal dryness and things like that, speaking to a doctor, there are medications
Yes.
out there that can help. And with the recurrent UTIs, there are things that can help. There are hormone replacement therapies. So I think just being that support system, taking them, going with to the doctor and trying to explain sort of things that sometimes the female doesn't even sometimes see, explaining it to the doctor can actually also help. And just as a last note,
Yes.
the age around, like the average age is about 51.2 for menopause.
Yes.
So in females, if you're around the 50s, just because you've reached 40 doesn't mean you are in menopause.
Thank you for
can
saying
wait
that.
until like around
Yeah.
51, and then you'll start to see the menstrual cycles are changing.
Okay.
They're becoming more irregular and starting to see those other hot flushes changes and the different,
It's profound. Any last words from my dietitian and our fitness expert as well?
Yeah, I just think in terms of knowing yourself, knowing your training levels,
Yes.
speaking to a professional, knowing what your carb and protein requirements are, making sure you adequately, you're having enough energy and carbs in your
Yes.
diet and protein, supplementing appropriately, it's very important.
Lovely.
Yeah.
And
And I think just being kind to ourselves, I think as women, we're really hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
So just being kind, if you want to exercise, exercise. If you want to rest, take that break. But we're all here to help you. Everyone can lean on each other for support. So that's the most important.
I love that. Thank you so much, ladies. It's been an incredible conversation. And I must just say, let's keep on talking, communicating, and asking for professional help, but also grabbing a circle of individuals that we can share with for our mental health and stability. I think it's so important.